Before we start this journey into the darkest corners of human experience, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and smash the like icon. These stories aren't easy to tell, and your support means everything. Let's begin. Some confessions should never see the light of day. Some stories are so disturbing that they challenge everything we think we know about the people around us. What you're about to hear are real accounts from real people, shared anonymously on Reddit, where the mask of civility falls away and the truth emerges in its rawest form. I cheated on my wife of 10 years. I left her and our 2 children for someone I met online in a video game. If I'm being completely honest, that sentence captures the essence of my confession. But the actual story runs much deeper than that simple statement. Let me take you back. I did a tour in the U.S. Army, and during my service, I sustained serious injuries. 2 vertebrae in my spine were completely destroyed, and the nerve damage that followed was extensive. The pain was constant, unrelenting. I was medically discharged, sent home to rebuild a life I no longer recognized. Fast forward 2 years. I'm drowning in alcohol, suffocating under the weight of depression that followed my military service. No money, no job, no direction, just endless days bleeding into endless nights. That's when I met a group of people who changed everything. Modern hippies, Wiccans, alternative lifestyle folks. They welcomed me into their circle when I had nothing to offer. Among them was a woman who absolutely despised me. She couldn't stand my presence. She said I was too polite, too nice, that my manners were somehow offensive. She had something nasty to say every single time we crossed paths. Months passed. I started hooking up casually with some of the women in the group. Slowly, I began to feel like maybe I belonged somewhere. The depression was still there, crushing and persistent, but I was clawing my way out of the nosedive. I found work, got my own place. By all outward measures, I was recovering. And then something shifted with that woman who hated me. We became friends. She turned out to be fascinating, intelligent. She had a son from a previous marriage. A great kid that I genuinely liked being around. That's when we started sleeping together. No feelings attached, just physical release. Just 2 broken people finding temporary comfort. When the place I was working at shut down, she asked me to move in. Made sense at the time. We were already intimate. I had disability checks from the VA. I helped her pay off her house with a VA loan. She seemed genuinely grateful. Then one night, I came home from hanging out with friends and found her crying on the couch. After a long conversation, she confessed she was in love with me. I had no idea what to say. The words felt foreign in my mouth, but I said them anyway. I love you too. 3 years later, everything was terrible. Financially stressed. On and off work in a small town with limited opportunities. Constant fighting. My wife, because that's what she'd become, started saying increasingly cruel things to me daily. I'm not someone who enjoys confrontation. Fighting has never been my style, but it felt like she was deliberately trying to provoke me into violence, trying to make me hit her. I finally decided to leave. I was done. And that's exactly when I discovered she was pregnant. My heart sank into my stomach. All my plans to escape dissolved instantly. I bit the bullet and stayed because it seemed like the right thing to do. The honorable thing. Things improved temporarily. We bought a house. I opened a business. We had a beautiful baby boy. I even took some college classes. I came to love her son from her previous relationship as if he were my own flesh and blood. Emotionally, I stabilized. The stress was still present, but manageable. Then I got cancer. If you've made it this far, drop a comment below telling me which story hits hardest. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. We're just getting started, and what comes next will test everything you think you know about human nature. The cancer treatment was brutal, but I survived. Through it all, my wife stood by me. I'd be lying if I said those months didn't bring us closer together. Facing death has a way of clarifying what matters, but clarity doesn't last forever. A couple of years after recovery, I fell into online gaming, specifically role-play gaming. It became my escape. Other than my kids, it was the only thing that brought me any sense of enjoyment. In that digital world, I could be someone else, someone without pain, without history, without burdens. That's where I met her, another player. We started talking in character, then gradually shifted to talking about real life. She was married, having similar problems in her marriage that I was experiencing in mine. We discovered we had countless common interests. Our conversations stretched for 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours at a time, longer on weekends. I started developing feelings, real feelings, the kind that made my chest feel tight and my pulse quicken, those fluttery, bouncy sensations that I hadn't experienced in years. I genuinely thought I was having minor heart attacks. I had no idea what to do with these emotions. Emotionally, I skyrocketed out of my depression. Suddenly, I wanted to listen to music. I wanted to dance. I wanted to go out, hit bars, play pool, live. My wife noticed the change immediately, and we got into a massive fight about it. Her words still echo in my mind. She said my happiness made her skin crawl, that it disturbed her on a fundamental level. For 2 solid weeks, we fought constantly, the same argument over and over until I couldn't distinguish one day from the next. Then, the woman I met online asked to meet me in person. I couldn't handle what was happening at home anymore. I felt like I was going to explode, like I might actually hurt someone if I stayed. So I said yes. I drove 3 hours to her family's ranch house, telling myself it was just a vacation, just a break from the chaos. We had dinner, walked through the woods, talked about everything and nothing. I felt peace for the first time in years. All the pressure that had been crushing me simply evaporated. That night, we were inside, still talking. We got tired. There was a futon. We laid down together and cuddled. One thing led to another. That weekend was perfect. I'd never felt that way with anyone. Every moment felt right, natural, effortless. I didn't feel an ounce of guilt about the cheating. Not then. Maybe not ever. When it was time to go home, I'd been out of cell service range the entire weekend. As soon as I got back into coverage, my phone exploded with text messages. Dozens of them. All from my wife. Cruel messages. Mean messages. Messages designed to wound. The final one informed me she'd sent all my belongings to my mother's house. I was being kicked out. All I could manage was a shrug. In that moment, I realized I didn't care anymore. The marriage was already dead. Had been for years. I'd just been too afraid to admit it. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Couch surfing at my mother's place. Not telling anyone about my weekend. My wife called constantly to tear me apart, verbally. She told me she'd gone out and hooked up with some random guy, presumably to hurt me. But I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. Another massive fight ensued. The final one. We screamed at each other until our voices gave out. Then silence. Cold. Final. Absolute silence. Make sure you've hit that like button. We're about to dive even deeper, and you won't believe where these stories go next. I filed for divorce, moved forward with seeing the woman from online. We dated long distance for months. Eventually, she left her husband too. We built something real together, something that felt honest in a way my marriage never had. Years have passed now. My kids are older. My ex-wife has moved on. The woman I left everything for is now my partner in every sense of the word. We're not perfect. No relationship is. But we're happy in a way that feels sustainable, real. Do I regret what I did? That's complicated. I regret the pain I caused my children. I regret the way it all unfolded, but I don't regret finding someone who made me feel alive again. Sometimes the most terrible confessions are the ones where you can't honestly say you do things differently. That's the truth that keeps me awake some nights. The knowledge that I destroyed a family for my own happiness, and given the chance to go back, I'm not sure I'd change a thing. Now let's shift gears completely, because what you just heard was someone's choice. However destructive, what comes next involves no choice at all, just pure survival instinct. I was barely 5 years old when this happened. My mom took me to a water park, one of those sprawling outdoor places with slides and wave pools and hundreds of families everywhere. It should have been a perfect day. Sunshine, laughter, the carefree joy of childhood summer. I was wearing a bright yellow bathing suit. That detail matters. Remember it. My mom needed to use the restroom and told me to wait right by the entrance. Don't move. Don't go anywhere. Just wait. I was an obedient kid. I stood exactly where she told me to stand. That's when a man approached me. He was tall, friendly smile, warm voice. He knelt down to my eye level and said he knew my mom. Said she'd asked him to take me to get ice cream while she was in the bathroom. Special treat just for being such a good kid. To a 5-year-old, this made perfect sense. Adults know each other. Adults help each other. Adults tell the truth. So I took his hand. I let him lead me away from the entrance, through the crowds, toward the parking lot. I don't remember being scared. I remember being excited about ice cream. I remember his hand was big and sweaty around mine. I remember the noise of the park getting quieter as we walked further away. Then I heard it. My name, screamed at full volume. A lifeguard was running toward us, shouting my name over and over. The man's hand tightened around mine for just a second. Then he let go. He turned and walked quickly toward the parking lot without looking back. The lifeguard reached me, breathing hard, and asked if I was okay. Asked where my mom was. The park security found my mom. She was frantic, searching everywhere. When they told her what happened, she went pale, held me so tight I could barely breathe. The man who tried to take me ran to his car and drove away before security could reach him. They got a partial plate number, but never found him. My mom told me years later that she'd only been gone for 3 minutes, maybe 4. That's all it took. 4 minutes for me to nearly vanish completely from her life. 4 minutes that could have ended with my face on a missing child poster. I'm an adult now. I have kids of my own, and I think about that yellow bathing suit often. about how easily I trusted a stranger, about how close I came to a fate I can't even fully imagine. Predators don't look like monsters. They look like everyone else. They smile. They speak kindly. They know exactly what to say to make a child trust them. And without vigilant adults, without that lifeguard who happened to remember a little girl in a yellow bathing suit standing by the entrance, my story would have ended before it really began. Parents, hold your children close. Teach them young that no adult should ever ask them to leave with them without explicit parental permission. Teach them that it's okay to scream, to run, to make a scene. Teach them that their safety matters more than being polite. Because I got lucky, so many children don't. If this story gave you chills, let me know in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed, because what's coming next involves a different kind of predator entirely. When I was 21, I was a complete disaster. I made terrible decisions consistently. I'm lucky to have survived my early 20s at all, and now I have a collection of stories that range from funny to absolutely terrifying. One night, I found myself without a place to sleep, so I went to a bar where a friend was performing stand-up comedy. I'd started drinking early in the afternoon and was pretty intoxicated by the time everything went wrong. At the bar, I met a man. Let's call him Creepy Guy. He was a friend of the comedian. The four of us hung out until the bar closed. I mentioned casually that I had nowhere to stay, and Creepy Guy immediately invited all of us back to his place. He was probably a decade older than the rest of us. Throughout the night, he kept breaking into these strange shamanic chants. It was weird, but I needed a place to sleep, so I ignored the red flags. We got to his apartment in the early morning hours, smoked some weed, drank more. Eventually, my friend left. Just me and another guy remained with Creepy Guy. I passed out on the couch. When I woke up in the morning, I was alone. Creepy Guy emerged from his bedroom soon after, and this is where it gets truly bizarre. He brought out women's clothing in my size, asked me if I wanted to change into something more comfortable. Looking back now, I have so many questions about why he had women's clothing in my exact size. But at the time, I was hungover and grateful for clean clothes. I thanked him and changed. We talked more about my situation. He offered to let me stay as long as I needed. Said I could crash on his couch indefinitely. I was broke, desperate, so I agreed. Over the following weeks, things got increasingly strange. He'd leave food out for me, buy things he thought I'd like, watch me in ways that made my skin crawl, but that I couldn't quite articulate as threatening. One night, he asked if I wanted to see his meditation room. I said sure. He led me to a small room in the back of the apartment. It was covered floor to ceiling in symbols, candles everywhere, strange objects I didn't recognize. He started explaining his spiritual practices, said he was a shaman, that he could see auras, that mine was particularly dark and troubled, but that he could help cleanse it. He asked me to sit in the center of the room, started chanting, waving his hands around me. The whole thing felt like performance art. I was uncomfortable, but tried to be respectful. Then he touched my shoulder, said he needed to physically release the negative energy trapped in my body. His hands started moving down my back. Every alarm in my body started screaming. I stood up abruptly, said I needed to use the bathroom. He looked annoyed, but let me go. I locked myself in the bathroom and called my sister. told her I needed to leave immediately. She drove across town at midnight to pick me up. When I came out of the bathroom, I told creepy guy my sister had an emergency and I had to go. He got angry, said I was disrespecting his generosity, that I owed him for letting me stay, that I was making a huge mistake leaving. My sister arrived and I grabbed my few belongings and practically ran out the door. He followed us to her car, yelling about ingratitude and spiritual darkness. We drove away. I never saw him again. Years later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd been arrested. Multiple women had come forward with stories of him luring them to his apartment under the guise of providing shelter or spiritual guidance, then assaulting them. I was lucky. I listened to my instincts in that bathroom. I had a sister who dropped everything to get me to safety. Not everyone has those advantages. If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button now. Show me you're invested in these stories. And drop a like if you think trusting your gut can save your life. The next story involves something most people never think about until it's too late. Workplace boundaries. This happened on a work trip when I was fresh out of college. My very first real job. I was young, eager to impress, and desperately wanted to fit in with my older coworkers. Two of them, a man and a woman, both married, invited me to hang out at the hotel after a long day. Nothing crazy, just beers and conversation. I figured it was a good opportunity to bond with the team. At first, everything seemed normal. We talked about kids, work, general life stuff. I was actually enjoying myself, thinking how cool it was to have coworkers who treated me like an equal despite the age gap. Then the woman started hitting on the man, aggressively, telling him to take his shirt off, asking inappropriate personal questions. The man was clearly uncomfortable. His face went pale. He tried to laugh it off, but eventually excused himself and went to bed. I should have left too, but this was my first real job. They were both older and more experienced. I thought maybe this was just normal adult dynamics that I didn't understand yet. So I stayed. Big mistake. Once it was just the two of us, she shifted entirely. Started showing me pictures of her children, talking about her family. It felt like whiplash after what had just happened. Then she pulled up Instagram, showed me a profile of a male model. Someone with a few thousand followers. Decent looking, but not famous. She leaned in close and told me she was having an affair with this man. That he was in love with her. That she was leaving her husband any day now to be with him. I didn't know what to say. Just nodded along while my brain tried to process what was happening. Then it got worse. She opened her camera roll, started scrolling through photos of this man. But these weren't the curated Instagram shots. These were candid photos. Photos she'd clearly taken without his knowledge. Him walking to his car, him at a grocery store, him through a window. She had hundreds of them. She'd been stalking this man, following him, photographing him without consent, and she was showing me like it was romantic, like it was proof of their love. I felt sick, made an excuse about being tired, and practically fled to my room, locked the door, couldn't sleep. The next day at work, she acted completely normal, like nothing had happened. The male coworker avoided eye contact with both of us. I never reported it. I was too young, too scared of losing my job. I just tried to forget about it. But years later, I found out she'd been fired. Apparently, she'd developed an obsession with another coworker, started showing up at his house, sending him messages constantly. He reported her, and the company finally took action. I think about that night often, about how she tested the waters with me, trying to see if I'd validate her behavior, if I'd become complicit. And I wonder how many other young employees she cornered over the years before someone finally spoke up. The workplace can be dangerous in ways people don't discuss. Power dynamics, isolation, the fear of professional consequences keeping people silent while predatory behavior escalates. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust that instinct. Report it. Document it. You might save someone else from a worse situation down the line. We're past the halfway mark now. If you've made it this far, you're one of the real ones. Make sure that like button is smashed and you're subscribed. What's coming next will stay with you long after this video ends. Let me tell you about my grandmother. She raised me. My parents were never great at the whole parenting thing. They drifted in and out of my life while my grandmother provided the stability I desperately needed. She lived in a modest house in a neighborhood where people kept their doors locked. She couldn't afford much, but she gave me everything that mattered. Love, consistency, someone who showed up. By the time I finished my education and was ready to start my own life, her health began failing. She started showing signs of Alzheimer's. Watching her forget things was devastating. This woman who remembered every detail about me, every favorite food, every childhood friend, was starting to lose herself. Some people suggested a nursing home. I refused. She'd been there for me my entire life. I wasn't going to abandon her when she needed me most. So I moved back in with her, became her primary caregiver. It wasn't easy. I worked full-time, which meant leaving her alone during the day. I'd come home during lunch breaks to check on her. The neighbor, a kind woman named Mrs. White, would visit occasionally too. Gran's biggest challenge was remembering basics. Had she eaten? When should she take her medication? She'd go half the day without food or water if someone didn't remind her. But she remained sweet, always smiling, always humming these little melodies from decades past. One day I came home during my lunch break and heard her talking to someone in the kitchen. I assumed it was Mrs. White, but something about the tone made me uneasy. I walked quietly toward the kitchen. What I saw made my blood run cold. A man was rifling through my grandmother's purse, going through it like he had every right to be there. And my grandmother, sweet, confused Gran, was standing nearby wringing her hands. "Can't you find it, dear?" she asked him in the gentlest voice imaginable. The man looked up and saw me. For a split second, we locked eyes. Then he bolted, pushed past me, ran out the front door that I'd apparently left unlocked in my hurry to get inside. I called the police immediately, checked on Gran. She didn't understand what had happened, thought the man was there to help her find something she'd misplaced. The police took a report but never found him. Said these things happen in the area. Predators target elderly people with dementia. They befriend them, gain access to their homes, steal whatever they can. I installed new locks, a security system, made sure Mrs. White had my number to call immediately if anyone unfamiliar approached the house. But the damage was done. Gran's sense of safety was shattered. She started getting anxious when I left for work, started asking repeatedly if the doors were locked. The Alzheimer's made it worse because she couldn't remember my reassurances. Every time felt like the first time. She declined rapidly after that. The stress and fear accelerated her cognitive decline. Within a year, she didn't recognize me anymore. Within 2 years, she was gone. I never forgave myself for leaving that door unlocked, for not being there when she needed protection, for not installing security earlier. Elderly people with dementia are among society's most vulnerable. They can't distinguish friend from threat. They trust easily because they're confused and seeking help. And there are people who exploit that innocence without hesitation. If you have aging family members, please protect them. Install cameras. Vet any caregivers thoroughly. Check in frequently. Don't assume they'll be fine because they've always been capable before. Dementia changes everything. Gran deserved better. She deserved to feel safe in her final years. And I failed her that day in ways I'll carry forever. Now let's talk about something different. Something that starts normal and spirals into absolute madness. We've all had difficult neighbors, but what happens when difficult crosses into dangerous? A few years ago, my wife and I moved to a new city for graduate school. Money was tight. The only apartment we could afford was in a rough neighborhood. Not somewhere you'd brag about, but manageable. The building was old and worn down, but most neighbors were decent, except for the 3 guys next door. Shortly after we moved in, one of them left. Didn't think much of it at the time. People move. It happens. Then I ran into one of the remaining roommates. He told me the guy who stayed was trying to get him kicked out, wanted the apartment to himself. That's when things started escalating. The power struggle next door turned violent. Arguments, police visits. It became routine. Eventually, the second roommate moved out too. That's when the last guy completely lost control. Every weekend became a party that lasted until 6 in the morning. Music blasting through the walls, people coming and going constantly. Neighbors called police repeatedly. His apartment got searched for drugs multiple times. I watched him throw alcohol bottles off his balcony, nearly hitting people below. He got into a physical fight with another neighbor. At first, he was somewhat polite to us. If we asked him to turn down the music, he usually would. He even invited us over a few times, showed off his drug and alcohol collection like it was a hobby. But when he lost his job, everything changed. The music went from a weekend thing to a daily nightmare. He didn't care anymore. Constant noise. No matter how many times we knocked on his door, my wife was studying at home, trying to read textbooks and write papers while the walls shook with bass. It was impossible. We complained to the landlord repeatedly. Nothing changed. The guy just kept escalating. Then I had an idea, a petty, vengeful idea that I'm not exactly proud of, but also don't regret. I knew his Wi-Fi password from when we'd hung out before, so I started messing with his connection, changed the password, renamed his network to insulting things, throttled his speeds at random times. It drove him insane. He couldn't figure out what was happening. His gaming sessions got interrupted constantly. His streaming stopped working. He started getting paranoid, convinced someone was hacking him. The stress combined with his substance abuse made him unravel completely. One night, he had a total breakdown, started screaming about conspiracies, claiming people were watching him through his devices, absolutely lost in his delusions. We called the police. When they arrived and we gave them his name, their whole demeanor changed. Oh, him! Multiple officers swarmed the building. He didn't cooperate. and they ended up taking him to the hospital on a psychiatric hold. When he came back a few days later, he actually knocked on our door, apologized. Behind him stood a large man in a leather jacket. His probation officer. The message was clear. He was being watched now. A few weeks later, he moved out permanently. The building finally returned to peace. He never found out we were the ones messing with his Wi-Fi, never knew we directly triggered his mental breakdown. But given everything he put us through, I consider it justice. Sometimes you have to fight dirty to survive difficult situations. Sometimes the only way to deal with someone who has no regard for others is to exploit their vulnerabilities. I'm not saying I'm proud of what I did, but I'm not sorry either. If you're still here, you're incredible. We're in the final stretch. Hit that like button one more time. Subscribe if you haven't already. And let's finish this journey together. My wife saved my life. She doesn't know it. I've never explicitly told her, but it's true. This was nearly a decade ago when she was just my girlfriend. I was going through one of the darkest periods of my life. Work was going nowhere. I had no real direction. Every day felt like a carbon copy of the one before. People probably thought I was just stressed or burned out. But inside, I was drowning. I didn't talk about it with anyone. Bottled everything up. Thought asking for help was weakness. One night, I got in my car and just started driving. No destination, no plan. Just an overwhelming need to escape. I ended up at a bridge on the outskirts of town. Parked my car, turned off the engine and lights, sat there in complete silence for 30 minutes. I can't say if I actually intended to jump. Maybe I did. Maybe I just wanted to feel something by flirting with the edge of oblivion. My phone rang. It was her, calling to check in, say goodnight, ask about my day like she did every night. I answered, tried to sound normal, but she could hear something in my voice. Asked where I was, kept asking until I told her. She didn't panic, didn't lecture, just asked me to stay on the phone with her. Started talking about random things. Funny thing that happened at work. A movie she wanted to watch. Plans for the weekend. She kept me on that phone for over an hour, talking about nothing and everything, pulling me back from whatever edge I'd driven myself to. Eventually, I started the car, drove home. When I got there, she was waiting outside my apartment. She'd driven straight over without telling me she was coming. We didn't talk about what happened. Not that night. She just held me. Let me exist without demanding explanations. Over the following months, she became my anchor. Not through grand gestures or dramatic interventions, just through consistent presence, calling every night, making plans, giving me reasons to look forward to tomorrow. I pulled myself out of that darkness, got therapy, started medication, rebuilt my sense of purpose, and she was there through all of it. Patient, understanding, never making me feel weak for struggling. She saved my life that night on the phone, kept me tethered to the world when I was ready to let go. And she did it without even realizing the significance. If you're struggling right now, please reach out to someone, anyone. The darkness lies. It tells you nobody cares, that you're a burden, that the world is better without you. But those are lies. There are people who would be devastated by your absence. People who need you here, even if you can't see it right now. My wife needed me that night, even though she didn't know how badly, and I needed her, even though I didn't ask. Sometimes survival is just getting through one more night, one more phone call, one more sunrise, and eventually, those individual moments accumulate into a life worth living. Hold on, please, just hold on. Before we end, I want to share one final story. This one doesn't have a clear resolution. It doesn't end neatly, but it haunts me in ways the others don't. When I was 15, I spent a lot of time at a local park with friends. There was a pub nearby where older kids would hang out. We thought we were so cool being adjacent to that scene. One night, a couple approached me. Middle-aged, friendly. They struck up a conversation, asked what I was doing, where I lived. Normal small talk that didn't raise any red flags. Then they gave me a gift, a bag full of snacks and a baseball bat with a ball. Said they thought I looked like a nice kid who could use something fun. My friends were excited. Free stuff. We shared the snacks and played with the bat in the dark, like idiots. As the couple left, they told me if I wanted more, I should come back next week. But I should come alone. That stuck with me. Even at 15, something about that statement felt off, but I didn't fully process it. I got grounded shortly after for something I don't even remember anymore. Couldn't go to the park for about a month. When I finally returned, people were talking about a girl. Nobody knew her name, but she'd met a couple near the pub. A nice couple who gave her stuff. Sound familiar? She'd gone off with them one night. They offered her a ride home, but they didn't take her home. They threatened her, used things she'd told them about her life against her. Then they forced her into a threesome. I didn't fully understand what that meant at the time. But looking back as an adult, I know exactly what happened. She was raped, manipulated, trapped by two predators who groomed their victims with kindness and gifts. When I heard that story, my stomach dropped. That easily could have been me. Should have been me, statistically. The pieces were all there. The gifts, the specific instruction to come back alone, the lingering presence near the park every weekend. I never found out who the girl was. Never met her. As far as I know, she never reported it. I hope she's okay, I really do. But I doubt it. Trauma like that doesn't just disappear. I'm in my late 40s now. That happened over 30 years ago. It still creeps me out to think how calculated it all was. That couple weren't just weird or drunk. They were hunters, and I was prey that slipped through their net by pure chance. The timing of my grounding saved me. That's it. That's the only reason I'm here telling this story, instead of being another victim. How many others weren't so lucky? How many kids did that couple target before or after? Did they ever face consequences? I'll never know. And that uncertainty gnaws at me. We've reached the end. These stories aren't easy to hear. They're not easy to tell. But they're real. They happen to real people, and they remind us that darkness exists closer than we want to believe. If these stories affected you, leave a comment. Share your own experiences if you feel comfortable. And please, subscribe. Hit that like button. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need to hear them, people who need to know they're not alone, people who need to be warned. Thank you for listening. Stay safe out there. And remember, trust your instincts. They exist for a reason.